journey it's taken to get here, for all this history.
The long journey is over. McIlroy has his masterpiece.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. Welcome to episode 100. We have made it to 100 episodes. Raise the roof, guys. We got the whole MOT crew on here. About to introduce them, but we have a special guest. Apologies on the day late dropping the pod, but I hope it makes up for the fact that we got back on Todd, aka Tadpole Powell, out of Tadpole Sports here in Eagle River. Grew up here. You can find all his more background, and the first episode we had him on was episode 54. But we just had a fantastic chat with him. We bopped all around topics. We'll just kind of let it roll and let you guys listen. But let's introduce the other MOT members on here tonight. We got myself, Gus, and let's introduce my brother, Max. Max, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Glad that we got to 100 episode milestone. Hell yeah, fellas. Nicely done. Yeah, no, awesome interview with Tadpole here this evening. So you guys stay tuned for that, obviously. And all those that have been closely following our very own Brian Eccles trials and tribulations as a huge Rory McIlroy fan. Stay tuned for after the interview. We're gonna get into a little bit of golf talk, deviate from the musky fishing. So for those of you that are waiting to hear his reaction, yeah, just make sure you stay tuned for post interview. With that said, without further ado, here let me introduce our third member. It's none other than Mr. Brian Eckel. Brian, how we doing this evening?
I'm doing great, guys. I spent the weekend, last few days of this week, moving into a new apartment here down in the city. Feeling
Big
good.
city.
Yeah,
New
big
dig
city
alert.
boy, new dig. Yeah, so been a good time, as good a time as moving can be. It's never fun. But looking forward to sharing this interview with you guys. Tadpole's always one of the most entertaining people to listen
So
to
good.
in the muskie fishing in general industry. I mean, he towards the end of the interview, so don't cut it short. Stick around for that. He
Oh
just went
my
on a
God.
tear. A little bit of a stand-up set there, and I was dying laughing.
I had tears. I don't know if you guys could see me because I mainly had the Zoom call on Todd, which to let everybody know, I actually went and picked up Tadpole and brought him over here to my place and had the interview in person. Got Brian and Max on the Zoom call. Mainly had it on Tadpole, but I was in complete tears away from the mic. I had to set it down and walk
That was
away.
so good.
It was
Yeah.
hilarious. So I really hope everybody enjoys it. Without further ado, let's just let that run, and we'll catch you guys in the outro. All right, everybody, here on the line, we got none other than Todd Tadpole Powell with us back on again. We had him last on episode 54 last year, and I think he was our most asked to get back on guest. And because we just had an absolute blast last time, shared some incredible stories, and we're gonna hopefully share some incredible stories here again tonight on episode 100. So, Todd, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Great to be with you guys again. Enjoyed the last show we did, and I don't think I remembered the last third of it, but that's okay because that's generally where it gets the best,
Right?
right?
Well, so walk us through that, Tadpole. What happened that evening? Who was the main culprit?
Well, I
got
got in
you?
a little potato water there, and then I went home and had a Kool-Aid and a hot dog there too, and next thing I knew, I was snoring. So I had to wait for the podcast to kind of get the whole thing figured out, but I
Uh-huh.
did. I listened to it. So and it was pretty good, and most of it was factual, right?
Right. What was your saying again about that? Being factual?
about it being factual. Well, I think most of the episode 54 was pretty factual,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah,
For
no,
the
I mean
most part.
that's why we bring you on. Is for the
Yeah,
facts. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. So yeah, we got
100%.
we got lots going on. I'll tell you a quick story just to start it off, just to give you guys an idea of how what happens as life goes on. So about 2.5 months ago, 20 below zero, I'm sitting in my store. There's not a soul on the street. It's 20 below, plus nobody's ice fishing, nobody's snowmobiling because we had no snow. So I'm sitting there doing some investigative work, with YouTube, of course, and I hear this god awful crash, and some elderly lady rear-ended my truck in front of my store with her brand new Bronco, knocked it up on the curb, totaled out her brand new Bronco, and um, she comes in. She doesn't say sorry, nothing, right? Whatever. I mean, she was probably a little bit shocked, and she says, "Do you have a broom?" Yeah, I got a broom. So she takes a push broom and she's pushing all the crap from the car, all the parts and pieces off the road, right? And the
Nice
tow
lady.
truck comes, the cop comes, and I never even walked out this door. I mean, what are you going to do? 20 below, your truck's smashed, right?
Hmm.
So she takes off. And so her insurance company, obviously it's not my fault. I'm parked in front of my store. And they give me a little black Nissan, rental car, because it's going to be a long time since when I'm going to see my truck again, because they can't get parts. Um, so the next night I hit a deer with that,
Oh
and
my
never hit a
goodness.
deer in my life. I put over 1 million miles on in this country. Smoke a deer with that. Of course I didn't take the added insurance. Make that up in volume. Here we go.
Hmm.
So the next morning I get up after I hit the deer, and my wife got a new rug in the bathroom. So you know how the women are always kind of tweeting stuff in the bathroom. They're putting doodads and knickknacks. So she gets this multi-shag, odd-shaped carpet. It's about 2 inches thick. It's kind of like circa Elvis, right? So I go in there in the morning. I put the coffee on, like I always do. That's my schedule. I go in to take a leak. So I get done taking a leak, and I step off the carpet, and I hear this crack. So I figured my wife must have dropped like a little plastic hair barrette in this big shaggy carpet, right? So I
Uh-huh.
limp and I get my coffee. I limp downstairs to the man cave. Hurts like hell. I check my foot for blood. There's no blood. It's not bleeding, but it's hurting. So I limp upstairs and get another cup of coffee and go in the bathroom, and I'm gonna get that piece of plastic out of this multi-shag carpet so my wife doesn't step on it. Well, there's no plastic there. That was my bone breaking when I stepped off the edge of the carpet, right?
Oh.
Oh.
Of course, so I do all my doctoring on YouTube, right? I mean, I can fix this stuff. So you look it up, and all you do whenever you break a bone in your foot is you get a walking boot, right? And if it's broke or cracked, it doesn't matter. So there's no sense getting x-rays. Who in their right mind would do that? So I put the walking boot on for a week and ratted around and took it off, and it felt great, right? So I
Hmm.
walked for a week, no problem, right back to normal. I get up a week later, and I mean it's hurting big time. So I get the walking boot on. I wear it for 2 months, right? And I'm thinking, okay, it's getting better, but it's still sore. So I'm thinking to myself here about a week ago, I got a really busy season coming up. 5 greenhouses, guiding, sport shop, doing whatever I got to do. And I better go to a specialist. So I do. So I go in, the gal, real nice gal and very knowledgeable. And she takes some x-rays and she's grabbing my foot and turning it left and right. And any pain there? And it's, a little bit. What about there? Nope. Nope. Feels good. Feels good. That's a little tender. She says, well, let's look at the x-rays. She comes back, she looks at me and she goes, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I'm like, of course not. It's me, right? She says, there's a needle in your foot. And I said, a what? She says, I'm
Oh.
99% sure there's a needle in your foot. So this was a brand new rug, probably made overseas, I'm guessing. And we have no needles in our house except a little tiny sewing kit somewhere, right?
Uh-huh.
So the needle was in the new rug. And I ran it through my foot down the length of my bone on my fifth
Oh,
metatarsal, which is your little pinky bone, right? And it's still there, right? I don't, it's been there for 3 months. There's no sense taking it out now. It's not infected or anything. So we no longer have the rug, by the way. That went away. But um, yeah. So so now I've been limping around turkey hunting, right? And then, boy, I felt it today after about a 2 mile jaunt in the turkey woods. But so yeah, that was the last couple of months. So it's bound to get better.
So, I mean, kind of, well, I mean, I feel like I'm at a loss for words here. I mean, it's kind of good news that your foot wasn't broken into a handful of different pieces, but at the same time, now you got a whole ass needle in your
A
foot.
little extra hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not doing any MRIs. I'll tell you that. That'll be spinning me around like a little
Right.
rag doll. But it's kind of funny. So people do that. They do all their, I do a lot of YouTubing as far as fixing stuff like we all do, right?
Hmm.
And doctoring too. Um, but so if you ever do break a bone in your foot or crack one, the big thing is what they call the Jones break. You never want to hear a podiatrist tell you you got a Jones break because that's bad news. So it's kind of funny because when she said I've never seen anything like this before in my life, I'm like, it's not the Jones break, is it? And she's like, no, 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 it's way worse.
oh my
I'm
God.
like, perfect, but I'm okay. I'll
All
I'll
right.
I'll get through it.
Yeah, you're a
Still
tough
looking
son of
down
a
at the
gun.
flowers. Yep.
Other than that, other than yeah, adding a needle to your foot this winter,
Yeah.
how was it?
The winter.
Yeah.
It was kind of long, there again, I'm not really ice fishing much anymore. I quit the ice fishing guide deal, you know, primarily because I've been doing the ice fishing gig for over 50 years and most of my people are pretty good, but you get some guys out and put them on fish and they come the next weekend with 10 guys and just pound the fish and I don't necessarily need the money, not that I'm wealthy. I just can't do it like I used to either, but
Yeah.
and that just goes to some of these liberal limits at 25 crappies are way too much. We might have talked about that in the last podcast, but
Hmm.
some
We
of that
did.
stuff has got to be tightened up for sure.
Yeah, the
So,
one thing I did really want to quick ask you about the ice season was so last year obviously, was, correct me if I'm wrong, but ice fishing was really difficult last year, not much ice. Everything like that. So from what you heard from people coming into your shop this winter, did it sound like people were crushing panfish? Like, was there a higher population, do you feel like this year from the lack of, I guess, pressure, if you want to call it that, last
I would
winter?
say it's pretty, that probably hasn't changed much. The guys that know where they're doing and know where they live catch them,
Hmm.
and then a lot of it's timing, I mean, hey, you can't catch them when they're not eating, but overall, I would say it was an okay year. I
Okay.
had some people in that were good at what they did and did well with the panfish, and some guys did exceptionally well with the walleyes, especially the guys that worked hard and maybe fished after dark too, on some of the Clearwater lakes. So, but overall, it was kind of a soft year, business wise, people wise, and then the lack of snow, obviously, no snowmobilers to speak of, and pretty tough for the Northwoods, but we're kind of used to that. Work all summer to pay for the winter. Hmm.
Yeah,
What do you
that is how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. Go ahead, Brian.
what do you have what's your docket look like coming up? I mean, getting ready for open water fishing. I think I saw some pictures recently that some shorelines were breaking up. How soon are you going to be out there once ice comes off?
Well, I don't fish opening weekend. I try and stay at the shop and help the customers out best I can and just kind of avoid the traffic so I'll start like on Monday and I'm not terrible booked. I don't advertise a bit. I take what comes and I'm still getting 3, 4 half days a week, which is plenty for me. I'm trying to take Wednesdays off. I don't guide on weekends, but yeah, I'm as busy as I want to be, that's for sure. But I think it'll be a okay summer. Even with the uncertainty that you see in the country today, with you got a lot of nervous Democrats running around thinking that the world's coming to an end, and I think I hate to get political, but that's me. I tell you what I think, and I think it's probably the best thing that's going to happen to us, and we're gonna see a really bright future here in the next year or so. But it's going to take a while for everything to kick in.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately for us, the fish don't vote, so they're gonna still be around and
Yep.
be ready to be caught. So yeah, we got smallmouth here, kind of probably getting going. I mean, Gus and Tadpole, you guys know better on when that's going to be kind of full systems go up there. But I don't want to speak for you, but I know that over the last couple years, it seemed like you've kind of geared a little bit more to fishing smallmouth over muskies. So you got to be chomping at the bit a little bit to get out there for this part of the
Yeah, I'll
year.
tell you what, it's been, our smallmouth fishery continues to be really good. Certainly getting more pressure than it has before, but 90% of the guys are catch and release. I'd like to tell you it was 100, but it's not. I watched guys last year. I had a boat kind of come in on top of me, which I'm kind of used to. And in the old days, I would climb in there. I mean, right on top of me. And the old days, I would climb in the boat and pull the plug out and stick it in their butt. Well, I don't do that anymore because I've matured so much. And
Right, right.
so these guys are right on top of me, and I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I mean, there's enough room here. I can cast 12 feet now instead of 80. But so they're slip bobber fishing, and bobber goes down. They catch a 4 pound smallmouth, a nice chubby fish, and lift it up and take a picture of it and throw it in the cooler. And I'm like, oh boy,
Wow.
that's just I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know. There again, I think the DNR can do something with that. I just don't see. I can obviously understand overpopulated fisheries that maybe need to be thinned out a little bit, but to kill those big females is just makes me ill. I look back years ago and we'd hit we'd have a shore lunch to do, and we'd have maybe the walleyes were off, we had some bad weather, whatever, and we'd kill a few male smallmouth for shore lunch, right? Not a bad
Mhm.
eating fish, by the way, and I ate a lot of largemouth when I was a kid too. My dad was a big all-around fisherman, but we did a lot of wilderness largemouth fishing, in canoes, and I think I told you I had a float plane and we would fly into these little lakes and just have an absolute field day with them. And we ate a lot of them, and there's a lot of our lakes right now that have way too many largemouth in them and do need to get thinned out and not helping our walleye fishery either. But that being said, I mean I can see just catch and release on these smallmouth. I mean, period.
Mhm.
I can't see the population. If it did get stunted, okay, let's crop some of them off. Let's take some of those males. Um,
Right. And the smallmouth, when you can start to keep them up here, isn't that until, is it mid-June?
Yeah, it's like the first Saturday of
First
June,
Saturday
something
of
like
June?
that. There again, we sit here as a couple of guides and a couple of proficient anglers, and we have no clue because once again, you have to fish and hunt with a lawyer and a nun in Wisconsin, and I don't even know. I mean, I do it for a living. And I was on the chain a couple years ago working on some electronics, maybe opening week or something, by myself and catch a couple walleyes. I didn't know what the limit was. I had to call somebody, come on, let's just
That
make
was
things a
good.
little bit easier. Um, you get into the regulations, which is a whole nother can of worms, but uh, that being said, now there's a deal on the Wisconsin Conservation Congress deal, a questionnaire. You want to have 3 lines for trolling in this lake, and then 2 lines for this lake, and 1 line in that lake. It's like, I mean, if there's some big concern here, so one guy says one guy says two, one guy says three. Why don't we go 2 lines statewide? Be done with it,
Yeah.
right?
I was just
I
having this
mean,
discussion with
this is
somebody.
just stupid. I've had people come into my store. I'll never forget, I had an older couple come in a few years ago. Really nice folks. They came in for bait every day. and they were here for about 3 days, and they had good fishing. And they said, we just love this area so much. We love the restaurants. You guys at our shop, people are so nice. And they said, but we just can't do this anymore. She said, we got to ride around with a rule book and call people and figure out what we can keep and when we can keep them and can we troll here or not there. And, I mean, you can keep a 12-inch walleyes on Tuesdays with a south wind. I mean, come on, let's just make things easier. Balls of fire, think about it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They just micromanage and boy, it's just frustrating.
What did those regulations kind of look like a long time ago when you first started guiding? I guess,
As I recall,
muskies,
walleyes
walleyes.
were 5 apiece, and years ago, I don't even remember what the regulations were, to be honest with you, back 40 years ago. I don't think there was much of a regulation. Um, I remember fishing with a couple of the old guys years ago, and we had really three kind of walleyes, right? We had peckers, right? We had eaters, and we had get the fargan netters, right? And that's, what do you got there? I got a pecker. What do you got there? I got an eater. What do you got there? I got a fargan netter. But yeah, I think, years ago, I guess there was 15 inches sticks on my head.
Sure.
But that, like I said, 50 years ago, I honestly don't recall. I don't know if there was one, to be honest with you, but
Just the wild west up here compared to what it is now,
it
for
was.
sure.
But I mean, it was 5, and then it went to 3, and then it went to 2, and now it's back to 3 on most of the lakes. Some lakes it's 1 under 14, 1 over 18, 2 under 14, 1 over 4. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. There's got to be a happy medium there. If you take a minute, and I just read not all of it, the Conservation Congress hearings are coming up here shortly, and I just went through it and read it. It's like, who sits in Madison and thinks about this? I mean, you have to read it to believe. You really do. I mean, it's just like these people. Yeah, we need a Doge raid in Madison, I think.
Well, not to change the subject too much, but I thought you had mentioned back in the day you had a float plane.
My father did, yes. Yep.
Okay, are you a pilot yourself, or was he the one driving?
You know what? I could,
Driving.
Flying.
flying is really easy. It's the takeoff and landing that gets you. All right. But
Yeah.
flying, I could
No,
fly when I was 12,
no, you
right?
two back then though.
Dad, I tell you what, the only problem I had is that having the short wheels that I have, it was kind of hard to get on the pedals. But my dad was an incredible pilot. And I might have mentioned it the last time, he was a B-17 bomber pilot when they had no fighter support,
Oh
19 years
wow.
old, captain, Silver
Wow.
Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart, yeah, the whole thing. They had a parade for him when he came back, but that
Jeez.
that particular group of pilots, the B-17 bomber pilots, that a lot of people don't know, is pretty interesting. I just learned it a few years ago. So these guys, the survival rate was 100 planes would leave and 40 would come back. 10 guys on a plane. That's how many would die on the average when they had no fighter support. Okay. So the guys that did, they had to do 25 missions. And the guys that did 25 missions, they had a group, kind of a nickname group called the Lucky Bastards. Okay. You can Google it and come up with it, right? And those are the guys that were, I mean, they were so fortunate to get back. So my dad, he was pretty much thought he was living on borrowed time anyway. So he rode hard, man. Everything he got into, whether it be planes, cars, he raced snowmobiles, raced boats. He'd get in it. Everything was a throttle, full tilt. Same thing in the plane, right? So we used to clean the floats on our plane. We'd fly the plane through the tops of the pine trees.
I was just gonna say, I
No
bet he was
way.
a hell of a pilot. I
He
mean,
was a hell of a
Yeah.
pilot, and he was just a nut. In fact, he was on the volunteer fire department in Eagle River. And whenever there was a fire when I was a kid, the whole town would run to the bank corner to watch my dad come around with he was driving the fire truck, come around with the fire truck like on three wheels, right? He's cutting through gas stations, right? I mean, it was so funny. Old Bud Powell, man, get out of the way. Here he comes, right? And that's just the way he rolled. So,
I
That's
feel like
awesome.
Bud Powell is like a classic pilot name too. I mean, that
yep.
just seems like it had all the makings. And
But
yeah, that's I'm assuming it was World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
I re I remember I don't want to misspeak here, but it was like the Americans, didn't they bomb only during the day? And that was one of the reasons why the fatalities were so great.
yeah, you could very well be right on that. Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
that's nuts. So
And
he
not,
came back and just let it rip, huh?
he did. In fact, just to give you an idea what kind of guy he was. Well, think about it. Okay, so I think he went to flight school, and I'm gonna say their flight school was like 7 weeks. Okay, so like 2 months earlier, he's guiding muskies on Little Saint, and 2 months later, he's dropping bombs on people that he doesn't know in Germany, and he's 19 years old.
That's
Right?
insane.
You talk about a deer in the headlights, okay?
Yeah.
So when my dad had his 70th birthday, we went to our resort. We went to his bedroom, and nobody had been in the bedroom for like 40 years. His bedroom was still there the way that when he left it. All right. So
Wow.
my grandmother saved all of his medals, all the newspaper clippings. He was on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. They did a story on him. He left a boy, came back a man. Um, all of his medals, his uniform, his survival gear was in there, including his pistol, right? In the survival
Jeez.
gear, and we can get off this, but just to show you how crazy it was, in the survival gear, he had a set of peasant clothes. So if he got knocked down over Germany, he had a set of clothes and pictures of him and his supposedly uh, peasant wife,
Right.
which they took pictures at, which they took pictures at, at the base in Germany with some peasant woman. Everybody had the same wife. Hopefully they didn't all get shot down at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
right. They didn't
You
capture
know,
all six of them or something like that at the
yeah,
same
right.
time. And
He must have been a pretty hot tamale, I'm thinking, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
that's
I love this
incredible.
stuff is I mean, I couldn't imagine, like, you talk about having to complete the 25 flights or whatever it is to be
Yep,
able to get done.
yep.
I mean, did he ever talk about, like, I guess the celebration that went down after you complete that 25th mission and
I'll tell you
what that
what, my dad, what I have found, being as old as I am and dealing with people that have been in the military, generally the people that were really in it and did a lot of and killed a lot of people, they don't talk about it.
Hmm.
My dad never talked about it.
Hmm.
Never talked about it. And and then at one time I thought I would go into service, and I thought my dad would be all for it. Oh, rah rah. And nope, you ain't going. He wouldn't let me go. But the last story I'll tell you, because I know we're kind of getting out into wherever, but um, so my dad, so it's not like you fly your 25 missions and they're gonna fly you home. You got to sit there and wait, with the other lucky bastards, right? And wait for a flight back to the States. So there's like seven guys, seven captains that are there, and they got nothing but money because they've been over there for months and months and months, and they get paid every week, and they got nowhere to spend it, because they're on base, everything's free, so they got a bunch of money. So my dad sits down with these other pilots for like, I don't know, a week, right? Never played poker in his life. Took every penny that they had. Came home a wealthy guy. I mean, came home with like 9 grand in 1943, I'm gonna tell you.
He's a
All right.
millionaire.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he gave the guys enough money for cocktails. I mean, any Powell would do that. Um, so he gets home. I said, "Well, Dad," I said, "What'd you do with all the money?" I said, "What'd you do?" He says, "I took a year off. I bought an Indian motorcycle and partied and got laid." I'm like, well, so it is hereditary. Come on, right?
Oh my
So
God.
I got a way
So
to maybe tie it back into fishing here real quick, because I
you
want
got it. All right.
I'm curious about this float plane thing. So you said you were flying it around to different lakes up in northern Wisconsin, maybe the UP. I mean, are those lakes that you still go to today, like that you can now drive to and
You
launch your
know
boat
what?
into?
And there can it kind of goes back to the Forest Service, the DNR. Um, so many of these backwoods lakes, they bermed up the roads, right? You can't get to them. If you're in, and we actually built a couple roads into some of these lakes. My dad was a Jeep dealer in town here, and being a pilot, I mean, his mapping skills were unbelievable, right? He could just, take a compass and walk wherever you wanted to. And we actually built roads into a couple of these lakes that I fished and guided years ago. And then overnight, in fact, one of the lakes I was actually trapping otter, and we were trapping otter and coons and mink on that particular lake with an old buddy of mine. And we went in, we drove in and set the traps, and we came back like 2 days later, and the roads were burned up. And so we had to go back, and we had some dirt bikes, some on off-road bikes, and we went back and picked up our furs and our traps and got them out of there, and they just burned them up, and you know, so some of those are a mile off a back road. So how's the average guy going to get to them? And I felt bad
Mhm.
because there was a lot of old timers in Eagle River that had Jeeps or little, four-wheel drives that would go into some of these backwoods lakes and bass fish and panfish, and now they don't get fish because you can't get to them. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
just, there again, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me because you talk about beautiful lakes. In fact, one of them, they're going to spread my ashes there is the plan. Um, and that particular lake, my dad nicknamed it Lard Lake. I caught a 7.4 largemouth out of it years ago, which was probably I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger largemouth here in Vilas County. I mean, legitimate 7.4, and caught him on a topwater black jitterbug at night. Used to do a lot of that. Phenomenal way to catch big bass. But at any rate, yeah, that lake, it's nine-tenths of a mile off a back road to get there. And
Wow.
I can't imagine nobody's going in there. I mean, the road's all grown over. It'd be a bugger to walk it, let alone, yeah, even even guys your age be tough to get in there with any kind of thing that's going to float, you know.
Were there a lot of
Too
lakes
bad.
though back then that you'd float plane to, and they were kind of like your hidden gem, and then nowadays they've turned into sort of a popular destination?
Not really, because there again, a lot of those roads got burned up, and some of them obviously you have to be, big enough to get in and out with a float plane. The one lake I'm talking about had a real short, narrow spruce swamp in front of it, so we were able to, take off and get out, especially with my dad flying, because he wasn't afraid of nothing. I can tell you that. Um, yeah, yeah, but most of those lakes were relatively small.
Yeah.
But part
Mhm.
of his job was he would fly scenic tours. So I would fly with him in the plane, and we would go to all these resorts all over Vilas, Oneida County, Forest County, pick up people. He'd take them for a 20-minute ride, and I'd catch the plane and help, people on and off the plane, take the money and get in the plane and go jump and go to another resort and do it again. So pretty much fun.
Never let you
Correct.
take the wheel?
Oh yeah, like I said, I was flying all the time, but it's just like the landings and flying's easy, man. It's that landings and takeoff that'll get you.
It's arguably the most important part.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I know I was gonna tie something back into the conversation from before where you mentioned parades, and when I picked you up to bring you over here, because we're in person right now, Todd and I, um, we chatted on a story where there was a parade for you that was very interesting and hilarious that you told. Um, from back in the day when you said you're a starving guide and that buddy of yours told you about that event up in Chequamegon.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was so funny. Um, yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. So Dick Rose, um, pretty famous guy. Started Discover Wisconsin TV show. Dick's probably best known for, the state record walleye, which turned out to be probably not 100% true. Um, Dick was, so he calls me up, and he always called me Toddy, my boy. He says, Toddy, my boy. He says, come on, he's real gregarious and outgoing, and he's just all this excitement and stuff. And he goes, yeah, boy, come on, Todd. He said, man, we're gonna go up to Chequamegon Bay. I'm setting up the world record muskie hunt. And I'm like, what's that about? And he says, well, he said, I told the Chamber of Commerce up there that he said if I bring 20, 30 boats up there and we fish Chequamegon Bay with some really good muskie fishermen, we're probably going to catch the next world record. And I'm like, well, Dick, I said, I'm a starving guy, man. I got a wife and a couple little kids at home. I can't afford to take off for 3 days and go do that. I got no money. Oh no, it's all paid for. No, the chamber's taking care of it, right? So I'm like, I talked to the queen. She's cool with it, and I said, okay, let's go, right? So we scoot up there and we get in there, and they got a parade for us, right? They're parading us down the town, a bunch of scrubby drunk musky fishermen, and we get to this hotel, and it's carte blanche. I mean, Dick and I got the suite. We go in there, cocktails, full bars, hors d'oeuvres, and I'm looking at Dick. I'm like, what? And he's
Rolling
just
out the red
smiling and
carpet.
goes, yeah, man, so they wine us and dined us and so we go out fishing and I mean it was like a biological desert, man. There was some trout in there, I think, but this is like 35, 40 years ago. Somebody might have caught a northern, you know. So we poop and hollered for like 3 days. And I was with a dear friend of mine that's no longer with us, Terry Tassie from Presque Isle, and Terry was on the board of Muskies Inc. with me, and kind of a convict from Presque Isle there, and so we got up there and we're trolling around, and it's so boring because we were pretty much casters anyway, and we're trolling just for the world record muskie, of course, and there's a couple cocktails in the boat, and I'm starving. Terry's got some like Fritos or Doritos or something, so I started eating it. Well, unbeknownst to me, he had this tub of fish scent that looked just like sour cream, right? So I popped that open, and I'm eating on that, and I'm thinking, and I don't want to insult him, because I mean, it's his Doritos. I don't really want to say, well, your Doritos are good, but your sour
Dip
cream
is
tastes like crap. So I ate a few, and finally Terry, the tears were running down his face. He was laughing so hard. It was some new fish scent dip, so put it on your lure but yeah, so needless to say, we did not bust the world record up there. But boy, you talk about some characters and these people, man, they thought we walked on water. Honest to God, they thought they had 25 Islanders walking in the door, and they were just a bunch of drunk, musky fishermen from Eagle River.
That's
what
unbelievable.
What did the chamber have to say when you guys didn't catch anything?
Nice try.
I suppose they didn't put that event on the next
Yeah,
year.
we blamed it on the weather, of course.
Oh,
right.
turnover.
Yeah.
Turnover.
Yeah, the muskies lost their teeth.
Yeah, they all fell out.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind that on Chequamegon? I mean, I know it's a great fishery for so many things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's Superior that's not really known for
I think what happened was that there was years ago, or even not that many years ago, there was a giant muskie or two caught by the commercial fishermen, right?
Yeah.
And it was back before the internet and before telephones and people ate fish right. And I think that's kind of where the whole deal came from. And or somebody, they saw some big ones spawning or something, um, back then, I imagine. So you think about it, the St. Louis River, I'm sure had muskies back then, and
Oh, sure.
obviously tributary of Superior. So yeah, and look at the Bad River. So there's some good muskies in the Bad River, and I think didn't Mike Keys do a show up there a few years back, I believe, and they caught a good fish or two, and that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about world record stuff. I mean, back then it seemed like that was kind of I guess modern day, we have social media for everyone to put up their pictures, but it seemed like back in the day everyone was kind of chasing the big fish, deal like the world records. Was there ever, I guess, stories or times where people came into your shop even, claiming they caught this great big fish that, might be a world record, or anything you guys heard through the grapevine of guides up there claiming that they had world record fish that
Well,
ended up maybe being disputed
not that they caught him, but they saw him and lost him, of course. And you know, I think for most people, especially back in those years, most people have probably never seen a 50-inch muskie, right?
hmm
I mean, 50-inch muskie in the water magnified is a lot of fish, and I personally have probably dealt with, I won't exaggerate. I think some of the biggest fish I've dealt with, a handful of that were 54, maybe one was 56, I'm going to tell you, up here, in our waters, which are obviously giant fish. But there again, there was a lot of, I'm going to tell you, there was more older fish back then, right, that had that chance to get that big with the lack of pressure, like we talked before, that in the last the last podcast, that you know back in the early 70s when I saw somebody fishing muskies, I usually knew them. We didn't have that pressure,
Yeah.
so those fish had a chance to had got a chance to get big, and there was some big old smokies out there.
Were there any like kind of like you did on Superior? Were there any other like sort of wild goose chases where like the word around town was on Lake X in northern Wisconsin there were giant fish and everybody was kind of fleeing there?
Well, I remember back when I started guiding. Um, I it wasn't the first day that I guided, but it was probably in the first 3 or 4 jobs that I had, and I did a lot of muskie and bass fishing. I did quite a bit of walleye fishing with my dad, but guiding walleyes back then was a little, because they were so seasonal. You could be, you could have, milking males on the rocks, and then started getting the weeds, and they'd be in the weeds, and then maybe some deep rocks or deep sandgrass. And I remember I was really nervous talking about a wild goose chase, so I was really nervous and talked to one of my old guide buddies, and he was guiding that day too, and I had heard that he had caught him on this one particular lake, and I knew the lake pretty good, not as well as he did. And I mean, back then, if you didn't get a limit, you might as well go home. I mean, you were just like, you didn't get a limit today. So at any rate, so I go out there, and he told me, he said it was on the, oh golly, what it was on the in front of the flagpole. Okay. So I get out there, and it's not that big a lake, right? There's 17 flagpoles on the lake, right? 17 flags blowing in the breeze, right? Well, I mean, I'm spending like, you know, 2 minutes at every flagpole, right? And I think I finally found them on number 15, all right? But yeah, those are the kind of goose chases I was talking about. But there was some big fish around. A good friend of mine, Barney the taxidermist, who was a character and no longer in Eagle River. I think he's still alive out in the Northwest. But him and another gentleman by the name of Stan Casey had a real and Barney mounted Dick Rose's Michigan State record, Doc Pivar's record, which was a 45 pounder at the time. That was the same year I caught the big fish with Pinky Hayner, so that would have been 1980, I believe. And I held that 45 pounder. Of course, it was killed, and that fish came out of the Cisco chain, and Barney mounted it. Barney's the same guy that mounted the state record walleye that wasn't. And at any rate, Barney and Stan had a big fish going, and they saw this fish, I'm going to say at least a half a dozen times. Um, and Barney told me, and Barney was a big musky fisherman, but he saw this fish a couple times, and he told me that this fish farted that 45 pounder. He said it was that big. He honestly felt it was knocking on 60 inches, and in a lake that if I told you what the name of the lake was, you would believe it, right? Just the way the lake is laid out, the food source, lack of pressure, tough fishery with not big numbers in it, so nobody's going to really go pound on it. You know what I mean?
I,
Then another one that was out of North Twin was a guy by the name of Ken Renicky, and Ken was a heck of a guy. Actually had a guide store in Eagle River. Nobody's ever done that before. Down across from the movie theater in Eagle River, he had a little tiny store where his wife ran it, and he guided. That's what he did, and that was his store. And his wife booked the jobs, and Kenny fished, and he kind of came to Eagle River out of nowhere. Super nice guy, a dear friend of mine, excellent fisherman. And Kenny would there again. Kenny had like 4 daughters, the family that he was supporting. He lived over by he lived on Catfish, as a matter of fact, right over by 12 Pines, which was no longer there. And at any rate, Kenny would take a day off when the conditions were right to go to Twin and chase this fish. And he saw the fish 3 or 4 times, and same thing, we're not talking 65, 69 inches. He was talking in that high 50-inch range, but deep, fat, and wide, and pretty aggressive fish. He hooked it once and never got in the boat. And then he hooked the fish in that same kind of 3 or 4 year period. He hooked the fish with a client. Kenny hooked the fish. The client, he got the fish to the boat, and the fish is absolutely wore out. We didn't have the tackle that we had now. I mean, probably, 25-pound mono, maybe not, might even been Dacron back then, and 6-foot rod, whatever it was. And the client knocked it off the hook with the net. And the fish rolled belly up and sunk belly up. He could see the white belly going all the way down into the depths. And Kenny actually hired a diver to go look for it, right? Paid big money. And Kenny was a starving guy, but he really felt the fish was probably dead. And that was the last we heard about that fish.
Wow, never to be seen again. I I just wanted to ask this question quick. So, you talk about like kind of joking around with some of the state records and stuff, and like, yeah, back then obviously you didn't have social media to get your name out there and promote your stuff. So I think the answer is probably obvious, but I've always wanted to ask somebody this, like when somebody caught a record or caught a really big fish, now looking back in 2025, like a lot of these stories have been kind of debunked. But back then, I mean, did people truly like believe in these records? Like, did they, when the world record got caught on like the flowage and stuff like that, like, do people truly buy into that? Or were you guys that were like guides and into the industry, like, know that that's just, it was kind of malarkey?
No, I think a lot of us did because, contrary to popular belief, I think most fishermen are somewhat honest, and especially when it comes to that, and I always kind of thought Spray's deal was the real deal, and there's still people that do. My good friend John Detloff, John's a good guy, and he's a diehard Louis Spray, caught that fish, and of course John's got a resort on Chippewa, might be a little biased, but he's a good, honest person, and I really consider him a good friend, and but you want to, talk to Larry Ramsell or anybody else that's on the other end of it. But my stepmother, Louis Spray, used to live in Butternut over by Park Falls, and my stepmother knew him, and she was a pretty young gal when she knew him, and said he was a shyster, and he was a hard drinker and anything for a buck kind of guy, and who knows, right? I mean,
what year did he catch that?
Oh golly, no, you'd be talking to the wrong guy there. I was it maybe in was it late 30s, early 40s, maybe 42, yeah, somewhere maybe around the war. And in fact, I did, and a lot of that stuff, you can look at some of these pictures, and I'm sure that stuff's all out there in some books that I haven't read, but I think there's a guy from Vilas County by the name of boy, don't quote me. It might have been Percy Haver. He's holding the fish, and I looked at this fish, and I'm thinking this fish is 46 inches. It might be 47, right? And he's telling you it's 59, and I mean, come on, really. But I did. I actually
It was
have a really good
49, by
memory.
the way, Brian.
Yeah, I had a memory
Okay.
of um, I went to lunch with Tony Rizzo and Len Hartman at the Honey Bear in Eagle River, probably, oh boy, 25, 30 years ago. And of course, Len Hartman, the big, catching the world records and stuff. And finally on his deathbed, I believe that was the case. He admitted that, he cheated. It wasn't. They put weight in the fish, whatever. I think he got $2,000 from Sports Afield that year or something, and that was around the Depression. $2,000 was $30,000 today, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more.
It's a lot.
And but yeah, there was a lot of BS out there, and um, I don't know if you need to go to a modern day deal or what, right? What do you do?
Yeah, I just don't. I think, I mean, I'm kind of speaking for myself. I just don't think, I mean, granted, we spend most of our time fishing northern Wisconsin. It's just not something that's really on our radar. Like, we're not sitting there going
Yeah,
out
right.
on the Eagle River chain thinking we're going to go catch a world record. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right,
Like,
right.
that's not
Yeah.
really the goal of the day.
Yep. Yep.
So,
But
you met,
I know I'm confident that there's some, obviously very rare fish, but there's no question in my mind that we have some 52s, some 54s, 56-pound class fish at the right time of year, right?
Mm-hmm.
60 is a stretch for sure. Besides obviously the bay and that, but we've got some Cisco-based lakes and, that have that shot and they're not getting a lot of pressure. They're just not. Guys don't fish them because, when Dick Rose caught that Michigan State record up on the Cisco chain. I think he told me, and I'm pretty sure on that, he went like 37 days without a bite trolling, right? I mean, I'd rather listen to Yoko Ono records than do that. I can tell you that much. I mean,
Right.
good night.
Oh, I've heard some horror stories on certain lakes up here from people that have gone to their knees and started crying, but what they get, their results are remarkable. They're getting 50-inch class fish, but
Yep,
they're going
yep.
1 month to 2 months without seeing a fish or getting a bite.
There you go.
Maybe seeing, but maybe not getting a bite. And
Yep, yep, yep.
that's tough. I mean, did you guide a lot on Clearwater back in the day? But I mean, if you're just getting
Not a lot.
bites,
I mean, I would do, twin, a little bit on Star. I fished with Tony Rizzo quite a bit. Um, a bucket topping, which I consider relatively clear.
yeah,
Um,
definitely is.
yeah. Not really. I mean, I fished, Big Sand and Twin, of course, a little bit on Pioneer. But most of my guys were, they're looking for their first fish. They're looking for action. So pretty hard to beat the chain, Eagle River chain, Three Lakes chain, even a Sugar Camp chain. And Sugar Camp never had a big numbers in it, but it tended to grow some big fish. We caught a few 50s out of the Sugar Camp chain, and I think there's still some good fish in there, but just uh, not big numbers at all. So
you mentioned Tony Rizzo and fishing with him. We've had a few guests on that have mentioned briefly kind of some stories. It seemed like he really was somewhat of a pioneer with some of that open water stuff. I mean, were you kind of part of that when he was, when you were having lunches with him and hanging out with him and fishing with him? Like, was he doing some of that?
Tony, of course, his open water stuff was primarily sucker fishing, right?
Okay.
He did have the one bait. Well, of course, he had the Rizzo diver, which was a pretty besides having pretty crappy paint, was a pretty good bait, and they caught some fish on it, and but Tony, not, I mean, yeah, well, he was for sure a pioneer, no question about it. I mean, people are looking at him out in the middle of the lake. what he break down out there or something. They're like, what's he out there for? You know, doesn't he know that muskies live in the weeds, right? And and not only a pioneer, but one of the absolute finest people that ever walked the face of the earth. That's for sure. What an absolute star. Absolute star. Anybody that knew him knew that. So
Yeah. What like I mean, you probably fished with him a handful of times. I mean, what was it, was it similar to how you fish, or was it different? I
just
mean, did you learn a bunch when you got in the bowl
just
with them, or
just grinding. I mean, you got to pull them off the lake. You know what I mean? You know, most guys are kind of not necessarily looking at their watch, but hey, boy, pretty long day. You know, we've been pounding for 8 hours. You know, Tony pounding for 10 and a half. You know, maybe he might let you, put a sandwich in your mouth while you're casting, right? I mean, just grind you down, man. You know, and he was shorter than me, right? So when I first met him, I said, no wonder your fish looks so big, man. You are just a little kid, and he's kind of looking up at me. He's looking up at me, and I'm five. Well, I'll brag and say I'm 5'7",
On a good day.
on a good, yeah, with my lifts on, But
yeah.
what a phenomenal person. God, if the world had more people like that, man, we would have no problems at all. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to
It's funny
hear.
because
Like,
Tony was I'll tell you the story. And you might you can delete whatever you want to do, but so Tony was a very religious little Italian, right?
mhm.
He had the gold cross on, God bless him. And the only time that Tony would ever swear, okay, well, 3 times, but there's only 3 things that he would swear about. One, if you ever cut him off, you are going to hear about it, and this is Italian swearing, okay? The other ones, well, I won't say the other one, but the second one was he couldn't say, okay? Tony was not a big fan of. Told him one time that he caught like 900 muskies that year, right? And Tony ain't biting on that, right? A pretty tall order. And so the only time he would ever use the F-bomb is if you cut him off on the lake and you brought up, he couldn't say it was okay. So that fargan, right? It was so funny because he couldn't pronounce it. I mean, I remember driving to Madison with him. We were going down to talking to the governor about the off reservation thing, and I never heard him say the F bomb so much in my life attached to the thing, It was kind of funny. Made the ride
Were there
shorter.
were there a lot of guide rivalries back then?
Oh, I would say, yeah, there was, and the ones I could tell you about, those guys are no longer with us. So there was one that was, oh golly, um, I will tell you guys this one, and this is, um,
To us or the podcast and
well, I'll tell, yeah, like I say, you could delete whatever you want. I don't give the pay is the same for me, right? 2 Snickers and a Coke, yeah, right.
Hopefully, Gus
So.
treating you to a few cocktails over
Oh
there.
yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
we got the potato water here. So there was an old guide up here by the name of Freddie Quashes. And Freddie was a retired meat cutter from Fond du Lac who retired up here and was starting out. So the number one guide, a guy by the name of Yutz Gensmer. And Yutz was a professional wrestler when professional wrestling was real. Okay. That's when these guys actually fought, right? To make a living. So this is
Okay.
before, Vern Gagne and, of course all the
John
other,
Cena.
what you got going on now, right? These guys
The
they were
Rock.
They're real wrestlers, all right. And Yutch, I
Undertaker.
mean, he was not tall. He was 3 feet wide. He had hands like catcher's mitts. And if you ever looked up Hitman in the dictionary, there was Yutch's picture because he was the meanest looking SOB. You want nothing to do with this guy, right? He always just scared the bejesus out of me, right? And a really good walleye fisherman. Might have done, I think he probably did a little musky fishing, but he was more of a walleye guy. Had a little resort in town here, and his son was Junior Ludwig. His grandson would have been Craig Ludwig, the hockey player from McIlroy that went played the NHL,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yep. I
And
remember him.
and I got to know Yutch, and man, what a nice guy. I mean, you never looking at this guy, man. You're walking on the other side of the street. You don't even want to walk by him, right? It's just such a super guy. So he's guiding this guy, this Freddie Quash, this meat cutter from Fond du Lac. And he's guiding Freddie like I'm telling you, 8, 10 times a summer, right? And they get to be really good buddies. So Freddie finally retires from cutting meat in Fond du Lac, and he's going to move to Eagle River. And Yutch is like, I got this lot right next to me. He says, now I'm going to sell it to you cheap, and you can put up a house, and we can be neighbors and live happily ever after, right? So that all goes down. Yutch has got a nice house. Yutch Freddie, Fast Freddie, we call him. He puts up kind of okay, it's a mobile home, right? A little bit fancier mobile home with the garage, right? So everything's fine. Then Fast Freddie decides he's going to start guiding, right? And he's guiding people on all of Yutch's spots that Yutch has fished with him for 20 years, right? Well, that party is over, right? So Yutch took Freddie's picture out of his wallet. Let's just say that, all right? They shared a driveway, all right? They shared a driveway. Yutch built a fence down the middle of the driveway, the shared driveway, all right? So let's go plow that baby, right? So that party is officially over, right? I mean, it was just like, oh my God. I mean, they would if you each gave them a gun with a bullet, they'd have shot each other. I mean, it was that crazy, right? So Freddie, oh my God. So I'm not going to go off topic. I'm still going to talk about Freddie Quashes, right? And I don't know if we talked about this in the first one, but Freddie, I don't recall if we did. I think you'd remember it if we did, but I'm going to tell you the story, right? So Freddie, meat cutter, he liked to eat, and he drank a lot. Freddie would drink a case of beer a day, half a bottle of brandy, which I always kind of looked down on him. I thought, why not whiskey? I mean, if you're going to drink that much, you might as well, it's not a hobby, you might as well go to the top, drink some Crown for crying out loud.
Right.
So Freddie, he's big, he's overweight, and his hip is just really bad. So this is probably, I'm going to tell you, 1971, too, something like that. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, you need a new hip, but you need to lose some weight before we put that new hip in because your body will not accept that hip with that weight. Well, Freddie, I didn't tell you, he cussed like a drill sergeant, right? Freddie could not get through a sentence with some F-bombs, some C-bombs. I mean, he literally couldn't finish the sentence without throwing those in there, all right? So Freddie's like, well, all right, son of a bitch, go do what you gotta do. Right? So they staple his stomach, right? And anybody that knew Freddie knows I hit him right on the head. That's how he talked, right? Do it, son of a bitch, do what you gotta do. Right? Freddie gets his stomach stapled, right? Back then, I don't think I guess it was a staple. Yeah. The one when it first came out, right? Well, he's they replace his hip finally after he loses all his weight. So he's out of commission for over a year. So I'm up north on one of my favorite little walleye lakes, and of course, Freddie's sitting on one of my spots, of course. I haven't seen him in over a year. So I'm guiding two guys that he knows, or I'm guiding two guys that he doesn't know. He's guiding two guys I don't know. So I get up onto my spot, and Freddie's already on it. Of course, it was my spot. Most of them are, according to me. Yeah. So I get close enough to talk to him, and I says, "Hey, Freddie, how you doing, buddy?" And I can swear a little bit because you can beep it, right?
What's that? Oh, I can bleep
Oh,
it.
you,
Yeah.
Okay.
you can just
He
swear
goes,
anyways. It doesn't matter.
okay. He says,
Yeah, you can
he
swear.
says, yeah, he says, pretty fucking good, Tadpole. How the hell are you? And I said, good, buddy. I said, man, you're looking good. I said, you lost some weight. And how you feeling? Son of a bitch, he says, I'll tell you what, he says, I lost 62 pounds. He says, it's the first time in 29 years I could see my cock, and I'm pretty goddamn disappointed, he says. These guys, these guys in my boat and his boat are curled up on the bottom of the boat, laughing so hard. It was so freaking funny. I just started to tear up right there. I remembered it. It's just like, oh my God, oh Fast Freddy, oh what a character.
How do you get the nickname Fast Freddy?
I get a lot of guys by the name of Freddie. I just call him Fast Freddie, and he was never fast, right? It was so funny because he had this wonderful wife, Elvira, and Elvira a lot of times would go with him on a guide job, and she would unload the boat, right? And you could hear Freddie across the lake. God damn it, Elvira! Get the goddamn net. He's just yelling at his wife, right? She's netting the fish. She loads the boat, unloads the boat, puts minnows on, and I tell you what, anybody that remembered Freddie and Elvira, oh Jesus, they were something special. They really were. And then being a meat cutter, he started processing deer up here for people, in deer season, right? So a couple times I helped him, cut deer over there, and he'd help me, cut my own deer or whatever, and he'd be doing like the back straps or the tenderloins, and he'd go, well, two for them, one for me, two for the other. He had
Oh
two,
my
he had two freezers full of meat all the time. But, yeah,
Real.
yeah.
God, that's incredible.
Hmm.
One thing I did want to ask you about that I know we didn't talk about on our last time chatting with you. So there's there's a big old northern pike that's mounted in your shop that I believe you caught, or maybe a client caught. You can correct me there. But it's like 46 or 47 some inches for northern Wisconsin,
Yeah.
inland pike, pretty insane. Was that something you dabbled into, or you just stumble across those giant pike waters up here? Because we don't see that ever up here
You
anymore.
don't. And most of those big pike are open water fish for the most part. Although there are times of the year that you'll catch them. Like I'm gonna guess and tell you that fish was caught in June. So the
Well, what was
water
the story of
temperature,
it, if you remember?
it was what?
What was the story behind that fish?
Yeah, I remember well. I was guiding a lady and her husband who that fish was the first fish she ever caught in her life.
'Cause I don't
Oh
think
my God.
that lake has muskies in it, does it?
It
So
does not. Nope, nope. And we've
were
got
you
some lakes
guys?
up here that we have some lakes up here that have some of those what I call the open water pike that are, they're not schooling fish. They are all by themselves. In fact, as I recall, so I've caught a couple. That one was 48. Time we got a taxidermist, it was 47. I've got a couple other 46s, 45s, 44s, 42s. Over the years, um, virtually besides ice fishing, all of them were caught open water trolling. I mean, I think every one now that I think about it.
Targeting them or
Well,
while
yeah, kind of
trolling?
targeting them, because,
Kinda.
yeah, I mean, I was certainly open for a trophy, but I mean,
Yeah.
we were catching some northerns but that open water bite, I mean, that's where they live. And there's probably about 6 lakes up here, I would tell you, some that you'd never believe that have some of these really big pike. They're again, super low density, but old fish that are in that 40-inch to, 48's the biggest in my boat. I think I've had two 48s. In fact, I remember Tony Rizzo called me when when that lady caught that 48. And kind of side story there too. The gal's husband was a tech geek, and he had this little tiny box camera, and I thought it was a still camera. He videotaped the whole catch.
Wow.
Somewhere I have
Oh,
it. And
wow.
then they flew back to Arizona, and they sent me a CD, and I didn't even know what it was. And I put it on, and he had cut it and put it to music and sent me the CD. The fish died, right? It was a long battle, and you could see the picture of the fish, how red it was. Just like muskies, when they get overstressed, you can see how red their tails are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another topic, right? Because I mean, I see so many dead fish on social media today. It just drives me crazy. And I can tell you when that fish is gonna die. When they get to that point with that red, those blood tails, they are dead. Period. They do not survive. Whole nother story. But so that fish was not going to survive. We tried to revive it for 25 minutes, right? I
Hmm.
mean, and I've had a couple of them that I've actually gone ashore, got out of the boat, and walked them around for 30 to 40 minutes to try and get them survive. And they just, light tackle and water temperature, probably, well, obviously the hotter the worse, the warmer the water the worse, but a lot of times it's just that stress from that super
Right.
strong,
Yeah.
15. That fish, that fight there was, I'm going to tell you, over 20 minutes, might have been 25,
Great. I mean,
right?
Jeez.
that's hard to even fathom this day and age. Like if
Yeah,
that, yeah, I couldn't even imagine.
yeah. So I mean, and you look at guys with the musky tackle these days. I mean, whether it be for film or tournaments or whatever tournaments, I get it. I mean, an extended fight is 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Boy, you better have a good drag there, buddy. God dang, let's spend $900 on a rod and reel.
Right.
Get them in.
Get
I'm
them
definitely
in. Get
guilty of
'em in.
that. I'm definitely guilty of that. I think what Gus, my
Oh,
vermilion fish went into the net within, what do you think, 8 seconds?
It's however fast that fish could
yep.
swim to the boat from
I've
30 feet out, and then it went in the net
I've
as it
done
came to the
I've
boat,
done it in
around the
tournaments
boat.
myself. Believe me, I
Yeah.
think I don't know if I got a record, but I think I've had a couple in maybe 4 seconds.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Yeah.
believe that anybody can get the net that quick, right?
Yeah.
But in my boat, you could, and that's another thing too. I've been watching some of these net jobs, and I don't care if it's PMTT or whatever these other guys are doing, but good night. They are some really brutal net jobs out there, first of all.
Bro.
And then not only brutal net jobs, hey, my boat, believe me, is not pristine clean. But I guarantee you this, I am going to get to that net. There ain't going to be a freaking lure on it, a jacket on it, a tackle box on it, another hook in it, period. When
Oh
I
man.
grab the net, I grab the net, not the net and six lures and a tackle box and somebody's coat or 7 Up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. No,
I just, and
yeah, that,
you all heard my net story, so that's coming from the champ, all right? So
yeah. I was gonna say, it definitely. I'm sure you. I don't know if you've seen the video, but maybe you have. I squandered a pretty bad one for Gus last year in
oh
one of the
yeah.
PMTT events, and
And I
yeah,
wasn't bringing it up just for you either, but
it sucks, man. It
it
sucks.
does. It
There's
does.
just nothing worse.
Well, you get the tennis racket guys, right? I mean, where these guys pick this up from, I'll never know. The guys
Hmm.
that hold the bag on the handle, right? And then they're so excited they don't let the bag go, so they just hit the muskie in the face with a tennis racket, right? Because that's how tight the net is in there.
Yeah.
And where's that
Right.
fish gonna go? He's gonna
Yeah.
do the pink. He's gonna do the pinky hainer swirl and be gone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you throw the net in with him, and let him swim around the boat twice.
Right. Yeah. That's unreal. That was
That's,
on the last episode. We
Yeah, yeah,
talked
yeah,
about that
yeah, yeah,
story.
yeah.
those
I'm
tournaments, you know how it goes. Like sometimes your brain just turns off, I mean,
It does.
it,
Yep,
but
absolutely.
more times than not, it shouldn't. And that's, probably what separates the greats from the goods and all that
No, but it's
stuff.
just
But
it's just experience and hey, how many times how many times net a big muskie in a pressured situation? Okay, almost once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not beating you up. I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, you just gotta focus and hey, especially when things are tough, right?
Right.
When the fishing's tough. I mean, anytime you
Yeah.
lose a fish, it sucks. But you lose a money fish, it really sucks. And I've been there. I
Yeah.
hope to think I learned my lesson. But yeah, that's part of the deal. No doubt
And
about it.
we talked about on our last podcast. There was this viral video of an angler, a guide, getting overly aggressive with another boat, mad about being in the spot, being in the way, yada yada. Was there ever a time back in your young guiding career where things got heated, one thing led to another, maybe it ended up at the launch after, the bar afterward, where things took a
Um,
turn?
not so much. Most of my I've got a story or two to tell you. I remember years ago when we had a game warden in Eagle River, and kind of similar. And then I'll tell you a story that more similar. But that's what came to my mind right away when you said that. So I'm down on the Eagle River. That's back when I lived on Waters Meat, and I'm by myself, and I'm throwing a marathon big slim and a mud puppy, and I'm fishing the river and catching muskies, and that was before it was slow no wake on the Eagle River chain. And I see this boat come around the corner, and this one of the fastest boats I've ever seen. This is a game warden with a 75 horse on an Alumacraft, which is unheard of back in those years. This guy was, to me, that was like a hydroplane. It was like Miss Budweiser coming down the river. You know what I mean? I'm just like, look at this guy is flying, right? And I'm casting. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sitting right there, and he's coming right to me. And I'm honest to God, I'm ready to jump out of the boat. I'm thinking this guy's gonna smoke me, right? I don't know if he doesn't see me because I got my bow, pointing right towards him. And he pulls back on the throttle, stops the boat, slams into the side of the boat, grabs the side of my boat, knocks me on my ass, and he goes, "Conservation officer, let me see your fishing license." I said, "What in the hell was that?" I said, "You almost killed me. You put a dent in my boat, right?" I lit into him. Honest to God, he started his motor up and whimpered away because he knew I was coming in the boat. I was just wild, right? And long story short, it took me about 10 years to train this game warden, and we got to be good friends after that. But it took that much
Oh
training,
my God.
right, for me to straighten this guy out.
You're
And
just
God,
an
what was the other one? I
overzealous
got him.
game warden. Overzealous
Yeah,
game warden.
so that was a game warden one. Well, oh, I know what it was. And this has got nothing to do with being mad or anything, but because I just forget stuff, but I gotta tell you this. So I'm up on Palmer Tenderfoot, which I used to fish a little bit. I don't get up there a lot. It's too far for me to travel. Cool water, pretty decent fishery overall. Got to run the river up to Tenderfoot, which is a bugger. I've seen people, sink their boat on the big rock if you don't know where you're going, and there's some years you got to jump the beaver dam, and that's always fun with me driving. I'll tell you that. So we're gonna hit her at relatively high speed, okay? So I'm up there and I'm guiding the guy, and this really ugly storm rolls in. I mean, it's going to be a big one. It could even be tornadoes, right? And I'm heading for the landing, and this guy in a little smaller boat gets to the landing before me, right? And I mean, we got lightning bolts coming down, just like probably in the top two or three I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it is dangerous. I get my people out of the boat, and this other guide I could tell he was a guide just because he had something on the side of his boat, Muskie Jim or some damn thing, and I'm just like, come on, Muskie Jim. I'm just thinking to myself, come on, man, we need to move this along here, and he is powdering his nuts, you know, and he's just making sure he doesn't scratch his boat. I got white caps and lightning bolts coming down, and finally he gets out of my way, and I back my trailer and I snap it on, boom, boom, like I've done it a few thousand times, and he comes up to me, true story. He comes up to me and he says, "You're a guide, eh?" I said, "Yep. Where are you from?" I said, "Eagle River." He said, "Yeah. You know Tadpole?" I said, "Yes, I do."
Yes, that.
He says, Tadpole, and I just looked at him. Yes, I do.
What'd you say after that?
Sure do.
Nothing.
Oh, nothing.
No, 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 no. And I still see the guy. He's actually a customer of mine. I never brought it up to him. I just thought it was just funnier than hell, and I'm just like, I mean, it's pouring, and thunder and lightning coming down, and got water dripping off our face, right? And that's what he said to me. I'm like, yeah, I'll never forget. I just said, "Yep." I didn't,
Yep.
I didn't say that's me. I didn't want to embarrass him. I just whatever. Not that it's just a odd thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I always, whenever that stuff comes to mind, I got to get it out because it won't come to mind again. Okay. Especially
So
now that I have glasses. So.
were you actually just flooring it over the beaver dams?
I'm sorry.
Were you actually just flooring it over the beaver dams to get between
Well,
legs?
you got to lift your motor up when you jump it. Oh yeah, no, I'm
Nice.
not kidding you. Yeah, no, you got to hit her pretty good, and of course it only works with tillers. That's why
Yeah.
that's why smart guides have tillers
Correct.
in the Northwoods.
There you go. You heard it here.
Yeah, we'll get that new Lumacraft out. We'll show you how to jump some beaver dams with that one.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I can't wait. I can't
Hey,
wait
what'd
to
you
bring
think
it
of
down.
Gus's new rig?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And I think we should run her up the deerskin tomorrow to try her out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put it on the Skinny
that's
River.
those guys, that Lumacraft crew, man, they did a nice job. That is, I knew that boat was coming, right? And it's phenomenal for sure. Yeah.
I'm,
If I
I'm
wasn't
pumped to
so
see
old
it
and
next
wore out,
week.
I might upgrade, but I'm good. I'll run that old Lund until she sinks. So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
you
always
had that.
Oh, go ahead,
Oh, I was
Gus.
just gonna say you've had that Lund Alaskan, is it? For as long as we've known you.
well, this is my third or fourth one. So
Okay.
they all look the same.
Oh yeah.
I don't really wear them out. The motors might get a little tired on them, but they upgraded that to a IPS hull, back in whatever 2007, 8, 9, something like that. And it was funny because the one I had, the first one I had, which was not the IPS hull, I sold to a good friend of mine, and that boat only had a 60 horse Mariner. They called it the Bigfoot. Okay, so it had the bigger lower unit. It was primarily made for pontoon boats, right? But and the thing was just an absolute. I never put a dime into that motor, and I think one year I ran that boat for, I'm going to tell you, oh boy, 10, 12 years. I mean, 180 days a year, 10, 12 years, a lot of time on that boat. And one year I had a little extra money, so it was a 3-cylinder. So I thought, and I'm no mechanic, okay? So I thought, I'm going to treat my boat and I'm going to go buy 3 spark plugs, right? So I go to Heckles in Eagle River, the old marina, and a buddy of mine's a sales guy there, or a parts guy. And I said, yeah, I need this spark plug. And he goes, okay, how many you need? I said, 3. And he comes back and he says, we have 1. I said, I'll take it. Right. So I'm thinking, and it was like, $5. It's a long time ago. And I'm like, $5 for a spark plug. Wow. I'm thinking, I got a really rare spark plug here. So I go to the auto parts store and I says, hey, my buddy Skip. I said, Skip, you got this really rare spark plug? He looks at it and he goes, yeah, we got about 400 of them. How many you need? And I said, 2. That's what I owe you. $2. So at any rate, I put 3 spark plugs in that motor. No kidding. I ran that motor to death. I didn't winterize it. I didn't do nothing to it. I still don't believe people winterize motors. I never winterize motors. That's a fallacy. That's like shoveling your roof. Why would you shovel your roof? Okay. The only the people that invented shoveling roofs were like carpenters, that didn't have nothing to do in the wintertime and needed some
Yeah.
drinking money. So they
Right.
said, hey, your roof's gonna cave in. We never shoveled roofs. Now it's
Right.
like a business. When's the last time you heard about somebody's house's roof caving in? It
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Maybe a
Right.
woodshed, maybe a tin garage. At any rate,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't winterize a motor. Come on. Who came up with that? Evan Root or something? I don't know. It's just like, nah,
Yeah, it's like asking a
winterize it.
barber if you need a haircut,
That's right. There you go. Yeah, pretty funny. pretty funny.
Well, I don't know if Brian and Gus got anything else, but I was gonna maybe just end with this. So I always like hearing, your perspective on the whole state of how everything's going on. But year 2025, I mean, what do you think the season's gonna bring here for us in the muskie world specifically? Um, you know, seems like there's been a little bit of qualms with how everything's been being handled over the last little bit here. So, people are obviously a little bit up in arms, particularly pertaining to stocking. But what do you think things are going to be like in the North Woods this year?
Yeah, so I just got a little glimpse of that not too long ago. There's going to be a cut back on the walleye and muskie program. Is that the understanding? Is that what
I believe so.
that's
Yeah,
kind of what I heard, and I haven't
yeah,
Yes.
a
got to
budget
see the
cut.
whole thing. Well, there again, I'll tell you what. I mean, I don't. Here's my thinking on the DNR, and the DNR has a lot of good people working for it. They have a lot of clowns down in Madison that wouldn't know the difference between a Suic and a Twinkie. They wouldn't know the difference between a deer turd and a rabbit turd or a milk dud. I think you need to send Doge to Madison. I'll tell you what I really think that we need to do with our fisheries is, and the whole hook and bullet thing, okay, and the hunting thing too. Um, you got to separate the DNR. This has come up before. Separate it from the forestry and the water quality, air quality deal, and everything on our side, hook and bullet, right? Our money, our deal, right? And then if we have to, and most of us as conservationists, hunters, fishermen, hey, we can do raffles. We can do a DNR lottery, win a boat, right? Throw some money at that. But first of all, Madison is such a bureaucratic nightmare. Way too many employees. I mean, it's just bloated. It just is. If you, and I'm not going to say I'm 100% on these numbers, but years ago there was an article about the state of Wisconsin and the state of Maine. Okay, land mass are almost identical to the acre. Okay, our population maybe in Wisconsin is a little bit bigger, but not a lot. Maybe because of Milwaukee, it's a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to throw this out there as far as the numbers that I heard. So they have like, Wisconsin has like, and I'm being conservative, I'm guessing 12,000 employees at Wisconsin DNR, right? Maine has got 1,200. Okay. So they interviewed like, the top 100 guy, uh, okay, the 100th guy in Maine. He's in hip boots. Okay. You know how far down the ladder you got to get to Wisconsin to get to hip boots, right? I mean, okay, you look at South Dakota, North Dakota, their DNRs have money in the bank collecting interest. Ours is broke. It's broke every year. Now they're stealing money for the forestry out of the fisheries to pay for the forestries, right? I mean, you talk about we better send old Uncle Musk in there, send the Doge boys down there because it's a poop show, right? And they're again not beating up the employees. There's some I know a bunch of them, and some of them are my dear friends, and they know who they are, right? And we have the conversation all the time. And believe me, a lot of them will tell you that now that they're retired or whatever, right? I mean, some of the stuff they do is just there again. Look at the new Conservation Congress. Go read that. It's like, what is this? I mean, it's got to be fixed. I have always said the biggest buck for our fisheries in Wisconsin, you need to privatize the fishery business. You need to privatize fish stocking. You get rid of all of the retirements, you get rid of all the medical and this and that, and these guys that are retiring, God bless them, they did their job, and that's the deal, right? That's what they signed up for, that's what they got, but it's too much. It's just not it's not sustainable. It's just not. There's just too much money going out the door, and not enough coming in, and yeah, Yeah, I remember, and we might have bumped on this at one time before that. Um, so somebody hit the wrong button at the Woodruff hatchery like 15 years ago and killed all the muskies, right? All the
Mhm.
thousands of fingerlings or whatever they were growing, right? So what was the accountability? Okay, so we'll
Mhm.
try and do better next year.
Yeah.
What's that? So if you privatize it, they bid it out. If you don't produce, you don't get paid, right?
Hmm.
I mean, Jesus, balls of fire. I mean, this is, I'm a common sense guy, and that's just common sense. You can't paint a better picture than that. Privatize it. Sell the
It's
hatcheries to private people. I'm not telling you shut them down and walk away. Sell it to people that know what they're doing, that know how to make money and know how to sustain a business. These people
Yeah.
obviously don't.
it's one thing that I've always been curious about because it's like, I come from a business background and like typically when you have demand, in a normalized market, when you have demand, there's somebody who usually can step up and provide supply. And I think if you polled, most muskie anglers that were in tune, probably every single muskie angler that was in tune would say, yeah, I would prefer better fisheries. And that kind of comes through stocking, right? Like if there's no fish to be had, it's tough to have better fisheries. So it's something that I quite haven't wrapped my head around. I mean, I know Brian, Gus, and we've thrown some ideas back and forth, but it's a little confusing on how we can use this platform to kind of help out in a sense of like, whether how we could leverage it to provide more money to what areas, and it just gets a little bit tough. So it's like, for me, I think it's interesting that you talk about privatizing it because it's like, yeah, I mean, if there is demand, it's like you think there'd be somebody that could step up and provide the supply
Well, there
to
actually
meet those
there
needs.
actually is, not to interrupt you, but there actually is. The DNR does buy from some of these independent guys because they
Hmm.
can't do it.
Hmm.
And we stocked some bass in the chain years ago. DNR won't let us stock walleyes. We stocked bass. We paid $2. I'm going to say we paid $2 for them. And the DNR told us flat out it would have cost them $4.50 to supply that same fish. So more than
Hmm.
twice of what we paid for them from a private hatchery.
Hmm.
So yeah, very frustrating. I mean, especially in these times, we are, you have to look at your fisheries, your hunting, your hook and bullet deal. You have to look at it as a business. You have to look at it as a grocery store. You have to look at it, people walking in to buy the product and the product's not there, right? And then I've always said too, as far as guiding goes, and I'm a conservationist, I do a lot for, where my limit doesn't count, right? I'm not out there filling the freezers, and a lot of guys are the same way. You, well, what am I trying to tell you? We're all just, the majority of us are so attuned to doing that, especially as you get older and see what it was and where it's going. It needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed soon. I really believe that because you get past a point to where financially you're not going to be able to do it.
I mean,
I
if
think
it
there's
if
a lot of
it's
And
people that
the,
share that
the
sentiment.
political power. I got to take a leak.
No, yeah.
And the political power. I'll be right back. Yeah, one other comment I had too on the stocking thing that I would like to make.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Go for it.
I,
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I just and one other thing like on the stocking thing, it's not the end all be all, right? I mean, there's some lakes that need better management. It's not a question of putting more fish in them.
Hmm.
But if you look at a lot of the success stories, especially in the muskie world, all of them came from stocking. Okay.
yeah.
Green Bay, Mille
Agree.
Lacs, right? I mean, from what I see, all of them came from stocking. So, I mean, you're going to get that pushback from the DNR. Well, stock, and I agree. There are certain situations. Eagle River Chain, I don't know if it needs to get stocked. Muskies need to be stocked there or not. They do it every other year,
Hmm.
right? A lot. Maybe that's why it's the fishery that it is. I would guess maybe that is the case. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if you look at Green Bay and and they're getting Mille Lacs and some of these other fisheries that have just exploded. And we're not gonna compete with those guys because you're dealing with a 335,000 acre lake, and then you're dealing with a 1,000 acre lake on the Eagle River chain, right? You can't, those fish
Yeah,
will
and
not grow that big. Plus the forage, but
yeah,
but
and I think for like an Eagle River chain, it's amazing what they do to that fishery. I mean, we've talked about this countless times. The amount of pressure that body of
yep,
water
yep,
has and continues to kick out fish week after week. It's awesome. It's a great testament to stocking, I think. Yeah, okay, you're not seeing a bunch of 50-inch fish get caught out of there. So what? It's a
right,
lot of fun for people to do Monday night league, Tuesday night league, Wednesday night league, a couple tournaments a year. It's like
yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great.
But I
So
mean,
I don't
so
know.
I mean, I would what I would ask the fisheries biologists, and I've known some good ones. I've known some that should be flipping burgers at McDonald's, to be honest with you, if they could do that. Um, why are we even killing muskies?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Right.
I don't. And in this day and age, um, you can say, I disagree with a lot of their walleye limits. I understand when a female walleye gets over 24 inches, maybe in that 26, 28-inch range, they obviously produce a zillion eggs, right? But they're not, very viable. Um, but I don't understand why we're killing 4 or 5 pound smallmouth or why we're killing 3 foot muskies. I don't get it.
Yeah,
Here's
I don't get it either in terms of having a being able to keep muskie period. But we had a guest on a while ago. I forget exactly who it was, but we were talking about the stocking problem with muskies here in Wisconsin, and the point was brought up that like you have a trout stamp if you're going to go trout fishing. If funds are the problem, why don't they add in a muskie stamp, right? I mean, $20. I think anyone
No,
would pay $20.
that's
That's that
that
that's that's too much. Here's my point on that.
that's been
So this is
debunked.
this is taxing taxes, right? So I mean, Lord knows, and we give these folks enough money to do the job. We do. Here, a $5 muskie thing, fine. Is it mandatory? No. If the guy wants to, hey, if you want to donate to the muskie fund, fine. But these guys need to be fiscally responsible because they're not. I mean,
Yeah,
look at our government in our state. I mean, our government's not fiscally responsible. How do we expect these guys to? I have been
yeah.
to there again. I'm not going to beat up DNR employees, but I have been to some DNR meetings. I've been to some DNR offices. It's like a perpetual coffee break. It's unbelievable. There's nobody doing anything. It kind of reminds me of was it the Fargo movie where the guy wanted to get the clear coat, right? And he wanted a better deal. So the car dealer from Fargo went to the other office and asked the guy, "What are you doing Friday? You going to the game?" "Yeah, can you get me some tickets?" They didn't even talk about it. Right? It's the same thing. You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? These
I
Yeah.
think
people,
that
they're standing around for the most part, not all of them. There's some great employees there. They're standing around waiting for their retirement. You throw, and now we're going to get a little bit more political, and then you throw the tribal deal in on it, which has not helped anything, right? And nobody's going to talk about that elephant in the room. And a lot of these fishery biologists guys are like, there's nothing we can do, right? We do this, there again, you blame it on the tribe, blame it on uh, predation, blame it on tournaments, blame it on sucker fishing. There's just so much pressure going on at the same time that, somebody's gotta point out the elephant in the room or take the handle. And that's where I see the privatization is the only way to go. I don't see it working any other way. And
yeah.
unless we
It
had like 50 Donald Trumps in the United States, we'd be okay.
it
Oh
it
boy.
does feel
Here
sometimes like
comes
it's
the nervous Democrats. Here we go. Ding,
think
tadpole.
you're probably in a safe space here with our listeners, I'd imagine. But um, it does feel sometimes like it's a little bit of a hand up situation. Like, people are just like, I don't know. Like you see all these debates on Facebook and it's just kind of boils down to like, well, I don't know, just put the hands up because it feels like people want to have a better product and want the situation to become better. But the comment thread that I have seen through, looking on social media chats and whatnot is like, yeah, I'd be down to, forego buying three, four more musky baits to put money towards stocking
Sure.
or put money towards the fishery. But like, I don't know where that money's going. So it feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect or a distrust between like, hey, if I'm going to hand over my hard-earned dollars, I want to know that like, the system I fish is going to be improved. And that's hard to do. Like if I'm going to donate 50 bucks, 100 bucks, 500 bucks, whatever it is, how do I know that like the three lakes that I love to fish are going to get better? Like,
Right.
seems like
And
that's a tough
then
solution.
we've dealt with the DNR on some stocking issues up here, whether it be some private lakes or homeowner associations wanting to throw some money into stocking their lake or whatever, and the DNR says no, right?
Hmm.
Oh yeah, no, because they're just, some of these clowns are just so much smarter than we are. And there again, there are some pretty smart people there, but I have talked to a lot of them that are in the wrong line of work. Okay,
Hmm.
they're condescending, talk down to you, talk down to professionals, old timers like myself, way frustrating when we we've been on these lakes for 60 years and you got some 20-year-old kid telling me how, what's wrong. I know what's wrong. You're part of the problem, not part of the answer. I can tell you that, my friend.
Yeah.
Took his
Well,
picture out of my wallet too. So
I hope enough people are trying to, figure out solutions this day and age, and it seems like it's kind of starting to get to that point. I mean, it feels, I don't know. I mean, again, we're younger guys. We haven't lived through the amount of different eras that you have in the fishing industry, but it does seem like a lot of people right now are kind of hitting that boiling point of like, hey, this has got to change or this has got to get better
yeah, I
because
think,
it's not
I mean, just
sustainable.
you just look, free, waste, fraud, and abuse that we're going through right now in our country. Well, it's in the states too. It's in the counties. It's in the cities. It's everywhere. And God, yeah, I'd even hate to even want to know. I'd probably have the big one with, your blood pressure because it's so much stupid shit out there, and the lack of common sense is so frustrating. And yeah, and my God, you can go down so many roads. So so yeah, let Joey Smith is playing on my granddaughter's soccer team. It's like, Jesus, where are we going? And it goes through the entire fabric of our country with the stupid shit that's going on. And it's not just politics, it's between people's ears. It's crazy, man. I don't know. Life was a lot simpler when I was 13 years old, sitting in a tree fort, smoking my first cigarette, my first Kent, right? And the guy that gave me the cigarette said, I took a puff and I didn't cough like everybody else does, right? I took a puff and I said to the guy, I said, Ray, why do you smoke these? He said, Tadpole. And he's like a year older than me. He said, you've been smoking as long as I have. They start to taste like candy, right? Okay. So that's our DNR. And those are the people that are running the show because they think they got it figured out and they don't.
All right, Temple. Let's end on a high note here.
Yep.
Let's give us a prediction here. What's the biggest money? What's the biggest muskie that finds its way into the to the Lund this year?
I'm just not chasing them around that much. In fact,
Hmm.
I'm gonna send Gus and a couple other guys that know what they're doing. I'm gonna send them some work, and I'm gonna go spank those smallmouth and get a few walleyes for dinner, and I'm
Love
kind
it.
of, I mean, I still got, I'll still go. Hey, when that topwater bite's going, I'm in. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
thoroughly enjoy
You're
that.
there.
I'm an early riser, man. I mean, I get up like at 3:30, 4 o'clock,
What are
right?
you
When you guys are
doing?
getting home from partying,
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I'm an early riser, and man, that early morning topwater bite can be really cool especially when you hit the right bite, but for me, I'm Captain Smallmouth, man. I thoroughly enjoy it, and the walleyes I got figured out pretty good. I can generally go out and, get the folks a nice dinner and stuff. And there again, the days of filling the freezer up are over, and in my boat they are. And we go catch a few walleyes for dinner and go, slap some smallmouth up. Boy, it don't get much better than that. And we, swing into lumpies for a Kool-Aid and a hot dog after that, and life is good.
Love it, man.
Love it.
Well, we can't thank you enough for popping on again. I really enjoyed it.
Hey guys, great to see your mugs again too with my glasses on.
Oh yeah, we'll be stopping in plenty in the old shop in Tadpole Sports, right there on Wall Street and Eagle River. So, yeah, pleasure having you over here, Tadpole. And before you sign off, do you want to? I don't know if we did this in the first one. What's your signature drink? It's called the Tadpole.
Tadpole is real simple, guys. It's a Crown Royal and water. Really easy on the water. Water's for washing, Grandpa always said. And yeah, we call it the Tadpole, and it's available. Graywood makes a great Tadpole. Lumpy's makes a great Tadpole.
They know what it is if you order it?
They do. Yeah. Yeah. I stopped a couple years ago, so they got good memories there. But yeah. So yeah, I get to a couple of them left turns there, man, and these guys, that old Thunder of mine, man, it just keeps jerking to the left, right? So, yeah, it's been a
Stop
fun
there,
ride,
couple
and,
years ago.
in the old days, it's funny because these guys, we started out, first you did the beer. Well, actually, when it started out, it was like Mad Dog 2020. You guys are too young for that, You drink that crappy wine, man, it come out your nose. Man, I tell you what, you talk about sick. And then you went to this little sweet things, a little Malibu and Coke, and the rum and Coke, and then it was you know, vodka and 7-Up, or come on, not a hobby, man. Just get to it. Drink
It's not a hobby.
You get up in the morning, right? You don't have a hangover. About noon, you're ready for another one. It's so simple. I actually have a bedspread out of Crown Royal bags. I had enough Crown Royal bags to make a hot air balloon, but I couldn't afford it, So.
That is hilarious.
Oh, God.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to stop in. I think I'll be up there for Muskie opener.
No
So
worries, man. I gotta go home and see the luckiest woman on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
You can't
damn
keep your
right.
hands off me. We had the big love fest there a couple of weeks ago, 1 hour and 3 minutes, but that was the night they turned the clocks back. So
Oh,
That's a
man.
lucky woman there.
Yeah.
Oh
hey, man,
boy.
good to see you guys.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
good
coming
to
on,
see ya.
Tadpole.
We'll see you soon.
All right, Tadpole. Take care,
Love
man.
you, boys.
All
Take
right.
care.
All right. Well, we cannot thank Tadpole enough for coming over, hopping on the podcast, and telling some absolute great stories, saying it straight, saying what's on his mind, just telling it to everybody. A straight shooter, comedian as well. And man, that was a great episode. We really hope everybody enjoyed that. But again, congrats, fellas. We made it to 100 episodes.
Yeah. I didn't know how far we'd get coming in. I mean, I think it kind of started as like, oh, I'll just do a handful, kind of see how it goes, might be a total bust, whatever, but gotten a ton of support from everybody on social media, in person. So, cool to see the great feedback and getting on these awesome guests every week, like Tadpole, keeps you coming back for more. So, been a good ride so far.
Yeah. Cheers to 100 more, hopefully. And love that we've made it this far. It's been a hell of a ride. It's crazy how quickly it's gone by, though. It's just nuts even thinking about Tadpole's episode being episode 54. We've done that many more,
Almost a
now
year
that he's
ago,
back
yeah.
on. It's just crazy. So, yeah, man. Well, great chat with Todd as always. Hope you guys took some stuff away from that one. I know we all did, but yeah, let's just dive right into it here. We got to give our boy Brian Eccles flowers. We had a lot of people slide in the DMs this weekend, worried for the health of our boy here, Brian. Those have been following along since day one. Know that we're all big golf fans, and Brian in particular is a giant Rory McIlroy fan, and more times than not over the last 2 years after majors, he'd come on extremely sad, disappointed, heartbroken, you name it. So, Brian, I'm going to give you your flowers, man. You get the stage.
Appreciate
Take,
it.
take me through your Sunday. What was that like?
I mean, it's been a long time coming. It's been 10 years. I still remember where I was when he won his last major. It's been a lot of majors watching him with a lot of hope and a lot of, either crumbling at the end or missed cuts. I mean, just a lot of false hope. And I remember last year, I mean, I think we recapped the US Open pod. He ended up missing a 3-footer on the last to lose to Bryson, and I had kind
Oh
of
my God.
given up all hope on him there momentarily, threw in the towel in his career. And since come out this year swinging, 2 wins leading up to the Masters, and I told Max, I was like, we gotta bet on him this week. All the stars aligned, and everybody's like, oh, you're really falling for it again, huh? I'm like, this has got to be it. This has got to be like, if this ain't it,
It's
I
the
don't know.
one.
If
The
not
one,
now, when?
yeah.
Yeah, like I was shocked at the conviction you had going into the week. Like this is gonna be full golf podcast, full disclosure here for the next couple minutes. So all those that don't give a shit about golf, just hit the 2x speed button. But yeah, man, I was surprised at your conviction going into the tournament. Like you just were like hell bent on like this is the time. Rory's gonna win this tournament.
Yeah.
And I mean, he decided to try to lose it about 3 different times on Sunday,
I
but
mean, at some point
ultimately got it done.
he's
It was
gonna right the
insane.
ship at some point, and
Yeah.
be able to have the mental strength and fortitude to win a major and to come in clutch. And I've lost hope at times, but I just felt like this year, after how he started the year, it was lining up. And yeah, so Sunday, fast forward to then, Max, I think what did he double bogeyed
Well, one,
13.
13, yeah, I was
One.
in
He
the
double
back
bogeyed
10.
one, and it was kind of like, all right, here we go again. I
yeah,
wasn't too nervous yet though. Like he started the 2-shot lead. I was like, all right, we're fine. We're still hanging in there, and started playing better golf. And then on 13, he double bogeys, and you start to
it's the
see the wheels come off.
worst golf shot I've ever seen in my entire life.
One of the worst shots.
Was it short or missed to the side in the water on
Missed it
that
to the
one?
right.
To the
Just
right in the water.
blocked it to the right. He said afterward he tries to hit this kind of a sweeping draw with an 80-yard wedge shot, and I mean,
Did the same on 18 then.
when there's water 5 paces from the pin to the right, he's like, oh, it just stayed there and didn't draw. I'm like, why the hell are you aiming over the water in the first place? Just hit it mid green,
Hit-
2-putt birdie or 2-putt par, whatever.
Overthinking the situation.
Yeah, so I call up Max after 13 there just for a little welfare check. I think I asked him if we're all right here, right? Like we're all good. Max is like, we are not good here.
That's not
It's
good.
it's happening. And I mean, it was the most roller coaster round, I think Rory fan or not, I've ever witnessed. It was probably definitely the most entertaining Sunday of a golf tournament I've watched. I mean, Justin Rose playing out of his mind and ends up like, I mean, there was 3 guys there. Like we thought Aberg was going to be, or Oberg was going to be a contender. Thought Bryson would be for a while, and you just never knew what was going to happen. Hit probably 2 of the best golf shots I've ever seen in a tournament in the final round.
Hmm.
Hole 7, I think it was,
The tree one.
over the trees for a little, 3-foot by 3-foot window to what he hit it to 5 feet.
He
And
was
then on,
laughing to himself after that
yeah,
shot.
yeah, he was
He should
laughing. And
be.
then 15 hits this absolute high slinger draw. Ball doesn't even get to his apex, and he's walking after it, which is just, that'll send chills down your whole body. I mean, you ain't felt alive until you've seen that walk after the ball mid-flight. I mean, come on.
Do you
And
want to take the
Tiger?
listeners through when we were on the phone and I was like a couple seconds ahead of you?
yeah. So it was me, Max, another one of our buddies. Shout out T-Wet. And
Shout out.
Max's TV seemed to be about 10 seconds ahead of T-Wet, and my TV was kind of right in the middle. 5 seconds behind Max, 5 seconds ahead of T-Wet. So every time Rory would get over the ball, Max would be like, all right, he's standing over the ball. I'm gonna mute up, and he'd mute up. T-Wet and I'd be laughing. I'm like, all right, hold on. All right, he's over the ball for me. I'm gonna mute up, mute up. T-Wet would let us know when he hit, and then we'd all get on to discuss. So it was funny for his last putt on 18 there to win it from 3 feet.
Oh,
We were all joking before, like, oh my God, he missed the same putt, to tie the US Open to force it into a playoff last year. Same 3-footer. And we're joking, like, it's gonna happen again. Like, this is totally Rory. Sure enough, we unmute and we're all just like, oh my God,
Going crazy.
damn near crying. Like, this can't be happening. And so yeah, going to the playoff and he hits like two most pristine shots. You couldn't have walked him out there better. And yeah, unbelievable stuff. I mean, his emotion after was hard to watch, really. Hard to watch. I think I had to hang up
you
on Max
cry?
there pretty quick. I'm like, all right, Max, I gotta go.
He's getting
You
choked
cry?
up over there.
Close, damn near. He's getting
Unconfirmed.
choked up. I think any passionate golf fan watching his emotion, knowing how hard mentally golf is to be able to overcome that.
It
I
had
just
nothing to do with the eight whatever you were drinking over there.
Yeah, the eight high
That had
noons.
nothing to do with the 8 high noons that you had during
No,
the
those are
round.
honestly, those are helping my emotions. Otherwise, I'd have been pacing up and down the
Oh,
hallways.
sure.
But no, I mean, crazy golf, crazy round. It seems like, I mean, it was great for the sport. Like I've talked to a lot of people since who aren't big golf fans, and they absolutely, got a ton of entertainment out of it. So it was good.
That's why we're talking
Tiger,
about it on the pod is like the amount of people that were hitting us up about it. I was like, holy shit, we got a big golf fan following
Yeah,
in here.
yeah,
yeah, no
yeah.
kidding.
It's cool to see. I mean, I think you get Bryson and Rory, probably the two biggest names right now, head to head, and then
Right.
obviously chasing a career Grand Slam. So crazy stuff. But I mean, that's 3 wins and 6 starts this year. Sort of entering some unprecedented territory here. 50% win rate through the first quarter.
Here we
I mean,
go.
what are we looking at for the rest of the year? I'll tell
Here
you
we go.
this. We're going to North Carolina here in about 4 weeks. Quail Hollow PGA Championship. You know where my money will be. I'm not
He's
gonna
running it
talk.
back.
I'm not gonna talk
True
about.
Grand Slam.
We're not talking about a single season slam yet, but I've made a deal with myself. If he wins the PGA, I'm going to Oakmont for the U.S. Open,
Wow.
at least for a day.
Wow.
I'm gonna be
I'm right
part
there
of it.
with you.
You'll go?
I'm right there with you.
All right. I'm
When,
thinking like
when's
it's
that one?
easy.
When's the U.S. Open?
I don't know, mid June.
Mid-June?
Yeah.
I mean, you could even fly out Friday, go there all day Saturday. Problem is for me, if he's like in contention, it'd be hard to just get on a flight all day Sunday and not watch it.
Right.
But I'll figure out those when we get there.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch. Funny being on the phone with you there for probably well over an hour from holes
Yeah,
13
probably
on through the
I
playoffs.
Hour
was
and a
gonna
half.
say
Two hours.
I was just sending in the chat and not getting replies from I think Max, you maybe did, but nothing from Brian. So I totally thought you just went like MIA as soon as he started to have like a little collapse in the
Zero
back
dark.
nine.
Yeah, I
I
really
thought you
wasn't.
just went zero dark.
I wasn't responding to anything on my
Yeah.
phone. I was
Brian kept
pretty
being like,
dialed
I'm
in.
getting texts. I'm getting texts. I'm not responding. I'm not responding.
Yeah, right when he double bogeyed, I think I immediately got like 5 notifications. I'm like, nope, not doing this.
Oh my god.
Oh man, yeah, that was a blast. All right, any other housekeeping items we want to touch on here before we wrap up episode 100?
Yeah, there's actually for sure. I think there's two things. First, so we haven't recorded together in like 2 weeks. So last episode we had to record well in advance. It came out after March Madness got done. I know this is kind of like long and gone, but we recorded, before the tournament ended. So we only just shouted out the winner on Facebook and Instagram and not the podcast. So shout out on the Mott bracket for March Madness. The winner is Kevin Brinkman. Congrats, Kevin. Get a hold of the Muskies on Tap Facebook and Instagram for your prize, the Mott hat and a bucktail made by yours truly, a Suggs custom. So shout out, Kevin.
Shout out.
Good job, Kevin.
So we also got another housekeeping item dialed up with Beyond the Eight Media by our very own Kyle Freeges, put up on YouTube. I think he put out some links on Facebook for sure. I don't know about Instagram, but it's it's a way to kind of grow the brand and also win a trip with Taylor Flannery, who we had on not too long ago with Muskie Guarantee Guide Service. I'm just trying to dial up the exact things
Well,
to enter
I
into
think
that. It's just
Victoria, his wife, won the trip, and they're donating the trip to somebody, and they're filming the trip if you
yes,
desire. So pretty cool all around experience. Not only do you get to go with Taylor for Muskie Guaranteed Guide Service, and you could potentially also get a very cool little video done up of hopefully a catch from that day.
yeah, that's awesome. So go check that out. That'd be great. And other than that, I don't think I have too many other housekeeping items. We'll be back with another episode next week, and that'll be the pre
Woo.
Cave Run episode. When
Oh,
that comes out,
boy.
Max and I will already be down pre-fishing. So we got to find a time to get that recording in. And before you know it, it's going to be open water. I guess the only thing I have to add on the Northwoods update, since this is going to be very recent and correct, there's still quite a bit of ice on most of the Vilas lakes. If you head down to like southern and middle of Oneida County, a lot of lakes are ice free that are the smaller, shallower lakes, and some of the larger ones are so-so. Basically just shorelines kind of pulling off, but yeah, some of the really big lakes up here are still almost fully iced over, except for some shorelines pulling away. But the weather looks pretty good in the forecast, stable, like 30s and 50s, for lows and highs. And I don't know, we'll have ice off in no time. I'm sure the big lakes are going to be icing off like just before walleye opener. So for all you walleye nuts, I'm sure you're going to get a great, walleye bite with a bunch of shallow walleyes. So that'll be fun, I'm sure, if that's what you like to do. So I'll be smallmouth fishing. Schmermouth. So, all right. With that being said, I think I got nothing else to add here. So, Brian, you want to take us away on the 100th episode?
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Muskies on Tap. Shout out to Mr. Tadpole for coming on tonight. Absolute banger of an episode. Shout out 100. We made it. Absolute party in here right now with Quincy. Shout out Cat dancing on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Grand Slam of Watch coming up here 4 weeks away. Stay tuned for live details and updates. Everybody should be celebrating accordingly throughout the next week or two for Rory McIlroy's victory. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Peace.